Hello, my quilting friends! My name is Leah Day, and welcome back to one more tutorial on sewing Mally the Maker. In this video, we are going to sew Mally's pants, and these pants feature real working pockets. Mally can stick her hands down in her pockets, they're real, and a real button fly. So this is very much like the pants that you're probably wearing right now. Very much like a pair of blue jeans. Did not put a zipper in that fly, but the way it is shaped and how the fabrics come together is exactly like sewing a real pair of pants. So you will learn lots in this video. This is an intermediate level sewing tutorial. So definitely pick up a copy of the pattern, mallythemaker.com/doll, and join in the fun as we learn loads about sewing pants together. So the first step is to make a pair of back pockets. What we're going to do is take our piece and fold under all of the edges, double fold the top, and stitch along it to create a nicely finished pocket. So here we go. I have created a little template here. This is the pants back pocket template. I placed a piece of freezer paper on top just to reinforce it. And now I'm going to use that to help me fold these edges over. So I'm first going to place this so that the bottom edge is roughly 1/4 inch from that bottom edge, from those angles, and 1/4 inch on both sides. I'm going to fold up that bottom edge, just kind of crease it with my fingernails, then grab my iron and give it a firm press. Now, if you really want to go for the gold, this is just a little bit of spray starch that I've sprayed into a small cup. And then I'm just going to paint that along that edge and then give it a press with the iron. Again, what that does is that permanently and really nicely creases that fold in place. You want to pull that up against that template. So there we go. That's one part done. Now we'll rotate it around, do the same thing. Okay, so now the top edge. What I like to do is go on ahead and fold that over straight because that's going to be the finished edge of the pocket. All right, now bring the end up to the template. So we're folding that over and then over, like so. Put a good press, that looks great. Okay, now remove the template. Just carefully pull that free. Make sure that you get that fold back in place, everything nice and flat. Give it one more press, and I am using my firm pressing board, so make sure to watch the tutorial. I'm making a firm pressing board if you need to. Now you'll take this to your sewing machine and you're going to edge stitch right along that upper fold. That's where you need to edge stitch. That is what it will look like when you get that stitched. So here we go. I've got my pocket. I'm lining it up with those alignment dots. I'm going to slide this under the machine, under the foot, and I actually want nice long thread tails. So I'm going to lift my needle up, pull that thread out, drop my foot down, and I'm going to drop my foot down and maybe even consider dropping your needle down so that you can see exactly where it's coming down along the edge of that pocket. And we want to be about 1/16 of an inch off that edge. So I'm going to take 3 stitches, 3 stitches back. And you know, another idea would be a decorative stitch, you know, like that triple stitch that we did whenever we did Mally's shirt along her sleeve hem. So that's an option for you too. You could also do like something cute, like a decorative design on top of the back pockets, because that's a common thing that we have on our jeans, right? So that's an idea too. You could definitely bling these up and make them a lot more decorated if you wanted to. And that is what that pocket looks like once it's stitched in place. And as you can see, it's a real working pocket. You can put stuff down in there if you want to. Really, really cute. I'm just going to clip these thread tails, do the exact same thing with the pocket on the other side. Now that we have pockets attached to both sides of the back pants legs, we're going to take these right sides together, align that back seam, and we're going to stitch from the top, back stitch all the way down, and back stitch again at this crotch curve. All right, so I'm just going to finger press that to one side. The back of our pants is done. So now let's start working on the front of our pants, and this is the wrong side. I want to be really careful about making it clear what is the right side and wrong side of these pants because it can get really confusing really quick. But the thing to keep in mind here, you can see I marked that guideline, and you definitely want to mark this on one or the other of these pieces whenever you cut them out. You need to have that line marked along with the dot, the clip line we're going to use, all of that. You need that marked in place. So we're going to say wrong. I'm going to put a W on both sides so we know that those are the wrong sides of the pants. So now that we're clear on that, I'm going to flip these over. And now we've got right sides up. We're going to take our pockets, and I'm using fabric that is the same on both sides. But if you were using fabric that had, a right side, wrong side, then you would be going right side down. So this would be right sides together. You'd have pants right side up, pocket right side down. So right sides together with your pocket on the pants. And this is going to be the pocket inside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this together just along this curving seam. We're going to start up here, back stitch, go down, back stitch here. We're just doing that little bit of stitching on both pockets. So I'm going to lift my foot, I'm going to push those fabrics right up against the needle that kind of puts them in jail, take 3 stitches forward, take 3 stitches back, and then go forward. And then when I get to that curve, I'm going to lift my foot slightly and just continue that curve. Just trying to keep my foot in nice alignment with that so that I'm stitching that accurate 1/4 inch seam. There we go. And I'm going to get the lock stitch button to lock that end. Okay, now that we have that stitching done, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to trim this down so it's a little bit less than a 1/16 of an inch less. Usually I will cut a seam allowance in half, so it's 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to trim this one down a little bit more than that. I'm not going to clip my stitching, obviously, but I am going to trim that down to be almost not a lot there, right? And the reason I'm doing that is because it just makes turning this pocket that much easier. We're going to take that fabric and turn it to the back. And then finger press that nice and flat. And this is exactly how you make real pants pockets. You create that piece. This is the finished edge of the pocket that you see on your pants. You have to have a piece of fabric that turns that under to make it look nice. So there we go. Now that it's folded over, I'm going to put this back on the machine and we're going to edge stitch right along that about 1/8 of an inch away. So I completed that stitching on the other side as well. So this is the right side of the pants. Now we're going to flip these so that they are wrong side up. Again, we got the W's, so that way we know that's the wrong side of our pants. Now we're going to take the inside pocket. This is this bigger piece of the pocket. And how this goes on, this will be wrong side of the pants up, but right side of this piece down. So if you have this and you have selected something that's really floral and decorative on one side, make sure that that side is going to be face down, okay? Now, here's how we're going to stitch this together, and this is a little tricky. We are going to only sew the pockets together down this seam and down that side and across the bottom edge. Make sure that's nicely aligned. Straight stitch all the way down. Kind of guesstimate where that corner is. Maybe one more stitch, there we go. Okay, and then here you can see I'm tugging that pants leg down so I'm not going to catch that navy blue fabric in that line of stitching. I'm making sure I'm just sewing through the pockets, nothing else. Flatten it out nicely, and we're going to run a line of stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the edge up here and then also along here. So here is the right sides of the pants front at this stage. Here is the wrong side of the pants front at this stage. We're going to place these right sides together and we're going to start working on the center front. And this is another thing, I didn't really advertise this very much, but this pair of pants has a real working fly. We aren't going to insert a zipper, but the way this fly area, the center front opening is going to work is very much exactly the same way the center front of your, pair of jeans, pair of pants is going to open. So it's going to be a little tricky. We're going to go step by step, one side at a time. The most important thing is to stitch this center seam the correct way. Here's how you're going to do it. You're going to start up here at the top, and please note that I marked this with a fabric marking pencil, and I think that's a really good idea. Mark these lines from the pattern piece on the fabric so that you have it marked very, very clear. So we're going to start up here at the top. We're going to do a little back stitch just to secure it, lock it in place, and we're going to use a 5mm stitch to stitch down, so basically a basting stitch. We're going to get to the dot, and we're going to change to a 1.5mm stitch, back stitch, and then stitch the rest of the way through that little crotch curve. And make sure to back stitch at the end. The reason we're doing this is that this stitching through here is temporary. That's going to eventually be opened to allow Mally to be able to slip on her pants. This section is going to be stitched and finished, so that's going to be locked together. So this is exactly what you're looking for. Nice big stitches down to that dot, little stitches and a good solid back stitch here at the end. All right, so now what we're going to do, take a pair of scissors and we're going to clip that fabric. And I actually marked that on the pattern, so it's real clear for you exactly where you clip that. You're going to clip it out, so now that's separating. You've got your little flaps here, and you've got your little crotch curve here. What I'm going to do with this little bit, I'm going to stitch a zigzag stitch. I'm going to finish it as desired. And now we're going to open this out. Pants are wrong side up. And now we're going to start working on this fly opening. And this is really the main part of the pattern, that the reason why I considered it intermediate, because some of this is a little confusing. We're going to take this step by step. So the first thing you want to do is take and finger press these flaps open and flat. And you can see those little dots are my basting stitches. And this is part of the reason why we did that basting, just to lock that in place and lock that open, so that way we have those flaps nicely opened. We can see exactly where that's supposed to be. All right, we are going to first work on this left flap. We're going to work on this. This is going to be the side that is flat to Mally's body. It's going to have the little stitching curve that you think of whenever you think of a pair of blue jeans. And in order to make this side, we're first going to take that left flap, we're going to fold it over so that the raw edge is lined up with the stitching in the middle of the pants. So we're bringing the edge to the middle, okay? Just going ahead and give that a finger crease. If you want to, you can take it to an iron and actually press it. It's totally up to you. Now pick it up, pull all the rest of the pants away so that you only have this little left side flap. We're going to take it to the machine and we're going to straight stitch 1/4 inch away from that edge, just right along that little edge right there. Here's my pants. Here's that left flap. I just folded it over and just stitched along that bottom edge. I'll pick it back up again. I'm going to trim off the bottom edge of that seam allowance. Just trimming that down just to reduce bulk. Might even nip that little folded corner a little bit just to make it easy, because now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this. So I'm going to put my finger in here and just turn it right side out. There we go. I take my tip of my scissors and insert and just poke at that. So here you can see the little seam allowance of that little seam we just stitched. That's tucked in there. Now the raw edge, the former outer edge of that flap, is now lining up and tucked against that line of basting stitches. And when I fold this over to the left-hand side of the pants, you can see that completely conceals that, raw edge. What we're going to do is we're going to take our little fly template, and I just doubled this by putting a piece of freezer paper on top of it, so it's a little thicker, a little stiffer, a little bit more secure. I'm going to place that fly template on top, and I'm lining that up so that the straight edge of the fly template is lined up with that line of basting stitches, and then the curve is lined up so that it's just going to go right over that flap. And I'm just going to mark that curve. That's the only part that I need. And also the top edge of that template is lined up with the top edge of the pants. Okay, so here you can see what you got. A nice crotch curve. I keep saying that word. I know it might be driving you crazy, but I mean, really, that is what it is. You make any pair of pants, you're going to end up with that word quite a few times. All right, here we go. So this is another opportunity for a decorative stitch. I actually do think that that's kind of important in this particular situation, just to make it look good, make that curve stand out nicely. So I'm going to switch to my triple stitch, which is 0.9, and that's going to put my needle also in the center position. So it's just a little easier for me to follow it as well, because I've got a groove in the center of my foot that allows me to follow along. So here we go. I'm going to line that up nicely. And a triple stitch is basically 3 stitches in place. It goes forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. You just need to make sure to time it so that as you start the curve, maybe just take 1 stitch at a time, so that way you're sure that you're going to get that nice curve in, and you're not going to end up with something kind of wonky or blocky or boxy, or the stitches kind of at a strange angle. Okay, so that is the wrong side of the pants. That is the right side. Da-da-da-da. All right, so that is the left side complete. We are done with the left side completely. Now we're going to start working on the right flap. So the very first step with the right hand side is to fold the flap under 1/4 inch. So we're going to actually take it over here just so that we can really see, and we are folding this flap under 1/4 inch. So now we're going to take that folded edge, we folded it under nicely, and we're going to fold that over again, this time bringing it so that it lines up with the center fold, with the center stitching, with our basting stitching in the middle. We're going to pull the pants away. We're going to make sure we don't catch that left flap. We don't catch anything other than the right flap. We're only going to stitch that little bottom edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And there we go. That is what you want. You have that little line of stitching right along the bottom of that right-handed flap. And just like before, we're going to trim that down. So I'm going to cut that down, just cut right in half, that seam allowance right in half, and then also trim up that little corner. That just helps you turn that corner easily. And again, we're going to take this and we're going to turn it. I'm taking the stitching and tucking it in. I'm going to turn this like this so I can see that basting stitch and I can see that folded turned edge of that right flap. I want to be able to see both. And I'm going to edge stitch about 1/8 inch from that folded edge. The only thing I want to catch is the right flap. A few stitches on, a few stitches back. Okay, and again, you can see here, I'm not stitching through anything other than the right flap that's just folded back on itself. It's like 3 layers of fabric, but all 3 layers are just that right flap. Okay, so here is how this should look. This is the right flap. You see that line of stitching. This is now secured. We don't have any raw edges poking out. Nice fold, nice finished bottom edge. We're going to take that right flap and we're going to fold it over on top of the left flap. This is on the wrong side, guys. We're going to take the right flap, fold it over the left flap, and we're just going to kind of almost a tack stitch, just something small, just to stitch these 2 pieces together right along that bottom corner. This is how, whenever you unzip your pants, it's not immediately, or if your pants are unzipped, you're not immediately showing your underwear because the right flap overlaps the left flap. And now it's time to remove our basting stitches. That opens out. You have your right flap extended so that they overlap. That is how to complete the front of your pants. Okay, we are in the home stretch. The only things left to do is to put our pants front and back together, sew the hem on the bottom, and attach our waistband. So we're going to take this one step at a time. We're going to line up our pants front and our pants back, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and go on ahead and finish that seam as desired. So here you can see these side seams. I did this 1/4 inch stitching, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then I finished the seam as desired, and I do that by doing that little zigzag stitch and then trimming the excess seam allowance away from the outside. Now I have moved to my firm pressing table, and now I am going to press up the hem on these pants. And of course you could make these pants shorter. You could make a pair of shorts, you could make a pair of capris. You want to play around with that a little bit just to see what is the right length, what you like best for your doll. I'm going to make these as long pants. So all I'm going to do is press the bottom edge of the pants up 1/4 inch, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that looks like 1/4 inch to me. Want to make sure it's nice and straight. If you can't eyeball that, just grab a ruler or grab a seam guide. Give that a good press. And then now I'm going to take it and fold it up again. That fully encases the bottom edge. And I'm taking that up about 3/8 of an inch. It's just a little bit more up that second time. And that fully encases the bottom edge, creates a really nice hem on the bottom of the pants. What I'm going to do is take this to the machine, and I'm going to edge stitch along that top fold. So now we're going to bring our inside seam together, and this is going to line up and fit really easily. So just kind of smooth that out, bring those legs together. The crotch seam, if you want to, where the front and back come together, you can pin that. You can also, this is a good idea, send it so that one seam allowance is going in one direction and one seam allowance is going in the other direction. And I'm going to stitch this around 1/4 inch seam allowance, then I'm going to finish that seam as desired with my zigzag stitch and then trim the excess down. So we have one last step to do, and that is to attach our waistband to the top edge of the pants, and that is going to finish off this upper area. It's going to seal off the top of the pockets just to finish that, give it a really nice looking edge, very similar to the pants that you wear yourself. So first step is to prepare your waistband. I have taken this and I have pressed up one long edge 1/4 inch, and so this would be right side to wrong side. I'm pressing over that 1/4 inch of the fabric to the wrong side. Okay, so this is lined up. I've got my midpoint of the waistband lined up with the back center seam. That looks great. And I'm going to place a pin here, and we're actually going to get started stitching here, because what I want to do is I want to just gently sew this together. And I want you to see that the waistband is intentionally cut longer than you need. As you can see, it extends here beyond that left front fly. Lowered my stitch length to 1.5 millimeters. And so that's going to produce a nice tight stitch, very accurate with my 1/4 inch presser foot. So here we go. I'm going to take a few stitches and then back stitch just to get things going. There we go. And then now under here, I'm going to lift this up and just make sure that I'm only stitching through the back of the pants and the waistband. I'm only stitching through 2 layers here. So stitch about 1 inch or so and then rotate it around, kind of slide it around. Give yourself a little bit more space. Flatten it out here on your machine so that you have a little bit of room to play. Don't worry about flattening the whole thing out. You're probably not going to be able to. Just flatten out about 1 inch in front of your foot. If you can't even do 1 inch, do 1/2 of an inch. That's just fine. These are tiny pieces. You know, it's a little tight. There we go. So now I'm stitching over the pocket. This is where, specifically, this is where it's really important that you have that top of the pocket basted down, because as you can see, as I'm pulling and tugging on this, and if that wasn't basted in place, it'd be really easy for that pocket to pull downward, and then it totally would not fit with the waistband, and it would look really strange. It just totally wouldn't work. The whole front of the pants would become very distorted. So if you start to struggle and you're like, oh, this is just not fitting, this isn't going right, the pocket looks weird all of a sudden, that might be why. Check your basting. Make sure that you basted that pocket in place. This is the waistband, the right-hand side of it, when we were working on it on the center front. And we've got this little fold where we're folding this in and then we're folding the waistband over. So what I'm going to do is I have some Elmer's glue here in a micro tip bottle. I'm going to place one tiny dot of glue right there. Then I'm going to fold over, making sure that that is not, extending beyond that line of stitching right there. And I can use the tip of a pen just to poke this in place, get it exactly where I want it. And then I take the tip of a hot, dry iron and I press it. And what that pressing does is it heat sets the glue. And Elmer's glue is just basically liquid starch. It's perfectly fine to use on your fabric. It's perfectly fine to use in quilt making, doll making. I've been using it for years. All right, so I put another dot of glue right there, folding that over. And again, I want to, just take a little pen, poke at this just to make sure that that's all staying in nice alignment through there. That looks good. Nice and straight down that side of the waistband, and that's locking in place too. All right, so now I can do a very thin line of glue all the way down, just like so. You don't want to use too much. That's why I'm emphasizing using something like a microtip bottle like this, just simply to control the glue flow. If you get too much, it can really start to make a mess with everything. All right, so right here, I'm just making sure to poke those seam allowances down so that they are encased, folding that edge up and over to encase the stitching. And again, give it a heat set. Give it a little press. And I'm going to keep on going. And what's really nice is having that glue basted in place. I don't even have to worry about it. I know that it's in exactly the right position. I don't have to worry. Okay, so the final step is to sew on a little snap. And I just sewed that on to the inside of the pants so you can see how beautifully that front fly opens. It's so nicely finished. I love that. So there we go. That is the pants finished. You can see just how nice that stitching finished off that waistband, but of course, feel free to finish that off by hand if you prefer. Here you can see our finished working pockets. Definitely lots of space. You could do put little charms or something down in there. I know like a little scissor charm would be about the perfect size and scale for this doll. So now let's slip these on Mally, see how they fit with her t-shirt. But I absolutely love that effect. It goes all the way up to her natural waist, which is where, her waist starts to curve in nicely, and then her shirt tucks down, covering that up, but not covering it up so much that you miss seeing those cute pockets. So there we go. That is Mally all dressed up and ready to play. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed making Mally the Maker with me. I had a great time exploring not only sewing a new doll and fun yarn hair, but also creating miniature-sized garments very similar to how we would sew real garments, whether it be a t-shirt or pants with working pockets. And I had so much fun miniaturizing this, making it work on a small scale. Now, if you would like to learn more about sewing, I have another doll pattern for Miss Bunny. She is another character from the book, Mally the Maker and the Queen in the Quilt. And these two sewing patterns really work hand in hand. You can learn quite a lot by making both dolls. Miss Bunny comes with the doll, her cute little dress with lace details, and a pair of panties. So if you'd like to join in the fun, come and find both sewing patterns at mallythemaker.com. Until next time, let's go sew.